That's perfect. That's timing on the music. Welcome back to another episode, my lords, ladies and gentlemen. I hope this finds you well and that your Thursday evenings are treating you famously. We were supposed to be going out on Instagram too this evening, but just as the stream went live, it decided to drop. So I don't really know what's gone on there, and I can't check it out now, mostly because we're already going live. So, like most things, problems arose, have ensued, will be overcome at the proper juncture. So, right? So, we covered this last time in our episode together, where it was just us, 221A. Very much the case so far. 221B, right here, right now. This is where it goes. Right? This is where it goes. And there is almost an impish need for me to be careful, because this could very well just sound like a hype episode. I've sat through enough content where someone tells you something incredible's coming, and then the incredible thing turns out to be a mailing list. That's not what this is. All right. What this is, or rather what I'm going to try and do with it, is give you an honest account of what the show has become, what it's building towards, and why I think the timing isn't accidental. The world is louder and less precise than it ever has been. Opinions travel faster than evidence. Confidence has almost decoupled from accuracy. Whole industries have been built on the idea that you can understand human behavior from some lookup table. And whole audiences have been failed by that idea. This show, this podcast, whatever you want to call it, it was built as the counter argument. Not in a combative way, just in a methodological way. Holmes never shouted louder than everyone else in the room. He simply observed more carefully. And that is still the whole game. Still the whole kit and caboodle. So here's what we're building, right? And here is why I think you're going to want to be a part of it. All right, so what is the Deductionist podcast? Without any waffle, or with as little waffle as I'm capable of doing. We all know that I like to talk, right? And with this being just me here in the room, there is no one to stop me from doing otherwise, right? So what this is an applied reasoning show. Not a true crime show, not a self-help show, not a psychology podcast. The Holmesian methodology is very much the spine, and everything else, the neuroscience, the behavioral intelligence, the memory work, all of it is the anatomy that is then attached to the spine. Holmes wasn't impressive because he was clever. Right? There's many clever people in fiction and in reality. He was impressive because he had a system. So what we do here is we go into that system. Now, cards on the table. A lot of the content in this space, it trades very much on the aesthetic of Holmes, but just without engaging with the epistemology, the deer stalker as decoration. The actual method is harder to sell because it requires you, the audience, to do real work. And that's the whole point. And any audience members that have stayed have done so precisely because they want to do the work. They understand that if you're given some tool or some BuzzFeed, do these 7 steps, or some follow this table, do these 6 things, it's bollocks. You need to be doing the work yourself. Carl Friston's free energy principle. which was the brain as a prediction machine, one that is constantly running models of the world and updating them when they're wrong. The Holmesian method is a formalized version of that update process. You observe, you hypothesize, you test, you revise. You don't assume, refer to step 3 in the guide, confirm, and then move on. Right? That's not built for reality. I've yet to meet anyone in the working world that actually does that. And that's not to say that there can't be. All I'm saying is that I haven't met one. So let's tackle this on a few fronts, right? I realize we've been doing the show with Bob for quite some time now, but I've not really sat down to tell you about who he is, why his presence on the show really changes what it can do, and what the whole behavioral intelligence series is at large. Now, Bob will tell you of his CV more so than anyone, but this man is a decades-long veteran of the yard with operational experience in complex investigations, criminal enterprises. He's not a theorist, right? He's not sitting on an armchair reading books, talking into a YouTube microphone. He is someone who has applied behavioral intelligence under real pressure in real rooms with real consequences. When Bob and I are having a chat, the show gains something that it can't manufacture, which is the gap between the methodology taught in training rooms and the methodology that survives contact with the actual world. When I'm telling stories about my working world, Bob can bounce those back and say, he did this in this situation, I did this, and you tweaked that. And this is the enriched development of the practical use of the materials. These episodes with Bob, they're not just two people agreeing with each other for the sake of it. They are two people who come from really different angles on the same problem and who are honest enough to name the places where those angles diverge. Right? The first time I ever met Bob, he sent me a message on LinkedIn because he wasn't sure I was up to par. It's absolutely true. We got on a Zoom, and the rest, as they say, is history. I don't even know if he'd remember that or not. It was a long time ago when we used to work with, well, you shan't be named. That tension, that's where the most useful content lives. Bob's series with the Deductionist podcast, it sits within the operation, but it operates with its own identity. It's broader than simply investigative work. It's grounded in operational behavioral intelligence. It's built for an audience that really wants the field version of the theory. The distinction between academic behavioral science and applied behavioral intelligence, it really mirrors the distinction Dreyfus and Dreyfus drew between novice and expert performance. In that the expert, as much as I loathe the word, but this is their description of it, not mine. As much as the expert doesn't follow the rules, they have internalized the rules to the point where they respond to the situation. Bob lives at that level, right? And so this is what the series will show. So it is beyond the criminal flavor of, hey, Julie, of course you are. Maximum effort, right? Right. So it is beyond the investigative flavor, the criminal flavor that this side of the podcast is. It goes, as you've seen with the guests we've had. It goes into hospitality, into business, into sales, into human behavior, into social interactions. It's fabulous, right? And I'm saying fabulous as objectively as I can, because it's my podcast, right? So take that with a pinch of salt. I could very well be biased, but I don't just ask anyone to do this. Quick question. When was the last time you trusted your memory? But your memory without checking a device. Most people don't lose intelligence. They lose discipline of attention. MindForge is a structured training system that is designed to rebuild focus, recall, and your mental stamina, but to do so in just 10 minutes a day. No productivity hacks, no dopamine tricks, no supplements you need to swallow, just cognitive conditioning. So if you want your mind to feel sharper within a week, omniscient-insights.com/mindforge, or right there. Train your mind like it matters. You know, there is questions that come off the back of that, and you could ask, like, why does this methodology matter more in this year than it did when the show started? Look around. the gap between confidence and accuracy has never been wider. Social media has very much industrialized the reactive opinion. You know, you got the manosphere, the wellness grift, the body language bollocks that promises you can read anyone from a thumbnail, the AI tools being sold as cognitive replacements. All of it points in the same direction, in that the world has built an enormous infrastructure for not thinking carefully, and in some cases, not thinking at all, right? And the people who really try and make it their aim to think carefully, who've built this habit of observing before concluding, they're operating with a genuine advantage, right? Now that's not hyperbole. That's literally what the research on epistemic accuracy and decision quality actually shows. Holmes was a response to a cultural moment as well. Conan Doyle was writing in a period when science was displacing superstition, when the idea that observation and reason could crack open any problem, it was genuinely radical. I mean, we'll say very little for the time being of the move towards the more spiritual side of Mr. Doyle, but he had his own very tragic, deeply tragic reasons for going down that route. The cultural anxiety now is different, but structurally, it's similar. Too much noise, not enough signal, and just a widespread loss of confidence in the ability to tell the difference. Right? So, one of the reasons for this existing at all is to maybe naively, but to at the very least do my level best to attempt to restore confidence through practice rather than through reassurance. Philip Tetlock's super forecasting research, it found that a small category of thinkers consistently outperform experts in prediction tasks. So the differentiating variable isn't intelligence, right? Smart people can be dumb idiots too. Within that super forecasting element, it's the habit of actively seeking disconfirming evidence and then updating the beliefs when it's found. Kahneman's system 2 thinking is the mechanism. You know, the methodology that this show teaches, that's more the training protocol. So those episodes with Bob, they go out Tuesdays. We've just put together a 3-month plan. We've got a couple of really awesome guests line up. I was trying to think whether that would be interviews or whatnot, and then some guy works in interviews and interrogations. I'm saying some guy flippantly. He's quite an important person within the moving information of this way of doing things. But I got kind of caught up in the whole specifics of it all. So that's really where the behavioral intelligence run of the Deductionist podcast sits. Tuesdays, 7:30 if you want to join in live, but that's when they're recorded live. Like today, it's recorded live now. You can jump in and get involved and ask your questions, make your comments, do whatever you want. as much as comment sections will allow, anyway. And then they all go out as an official copy on Fridays. Okay, so brief story. I'm sitting with my wife, and we decide almost flippantly to put on Only Murders in the Building. It's on Disney Plus. For those of you that don't know, it is a show about a group of friends that live in, an apartment complex, a very pristine apartment complex in New York, and only murders seem to happen in that building. It's Steve Martin. I'm going to have to brush my beard as we're going. It's growing directly up my nose. Steve Martin, Martin Short, and Selena Gomez. And as we're watching it, I had this thought pop out, as in, is there something engaging about the true crime serial that I can use? Because there is casework elements that I absolutely can't bring you along for. There are all manner of FDA concerns with that. So, are there certain things that we can do together, and it be something that will fulfill the true crime serial angle? It would fulfill the brief for the episodes and the way that we're going to do it, and it be a little more active, right? I'm expressive, I'm an avatar for the dramatic, but it still is just me in a chair right now. So what can we do to get out and tread the boards of running an investigation together? And I thought, Kane's Jawbone, right? And I've been playing around with Kane's Jawbone for a while. It could be, I won't know until I make the episode, it could be a really fun, really detailed, really expansive project to illustrate the methodology of solving a crime. And we can do it together. Kane's Jawbone was a 1934 murder mystery by Edward Powys Mathers. It was published under the name Talk Marder. And essentially what it is, it's 100 pages printed in a deliberately random order. And the puzzle is to determine the correct sequence of all 100 pages and then identify the 6 murderers within the narrative. And as far as I could find, right, and again, cards on the table, this is maybe, 20 minutes of looking. So not a lot. But as far as I could find, only 2 people have ever solved it correctly. One in 1934, one in 1938. Oh no, there was a. I know, I remember this in lockdown. That's when it had the resurgence, wasn't it? Yes, that's when Maddie bought me the book. So there's 3. There was a third verified solution produced in 2021. Now, the puzzle has been described as the most challenging literary puzzle in existence. So we're going to attempt to solve it on record using the Holmesian methodology, not as some kind of cheap gimmick or a stunt or some sort, but more as a demonstration. If the method works, it works here. And if you have a copy or you want to get a copy, join in, right? This isn't a paid thing by Talk Marder or the Kane's Jawbone folks. I have no association with that whatsoever. All I know is that's a difficult puzzle, a difficult case that we can expand this method on together. And the reason I think that this project belongs on this show is the same reason. It's the same reason that Holmes belongs here too. It's not about the puzzle; it's about the process. You know, watching someone reason through an apparently impossible problem in real time, naming the inferences, tagging the confidence levels, revising when the evidence demands it. It's a better demonstration of the applied methodology than any amount of explanation will ever do. And the only real difference between this and the actual cases and the ones that you follow on television or on other such podcasts like it is the immersion detail and the exposure to the information that you're allowed to get on board with. Right. So what we get to do together, if you choose to join in, that's entirely up to you. Either way, I'm going to do it. Is to really see the tools being put under genuine pressure. And when you think about it, that's kind of the point. The structure of Kane's jawbone as a problem, it maps almost directly onto the abductive reasoning framework that was formalized by Charles Sanders Peirce. It was excuse me, I'm getting phone calls and I can see it tagging the sound level, so I'm going to throw my headset over there. Hopefully they didn't shatter. So it was inference to the best explanation from incomplete and disordered evidence. That's the classic Holmes formulation. That when you've eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. It's abductive reasoning in its most compressed form, right? So this is not, and will really never be, a literary project. It is a methodology demonstration with a literary vehicle, right? So usually when I say like we're going to do a series, it'd be 10 episodes, 20 episodes. We did a 100-day memory series. I have absolutely no idea how long this series is going to be, or it could be. I have no idea how long each episode might be or could be. All I know is that we're going to explore it together. And if that sounds interesting to you, then make sure you stick around. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, do so already. Because we're not just taking on any problem, we're taking on the hardest literary puzzle ever made. All right. So that's one thing. I keep saying we. That's me and the other voices. Me and the other voices that live inside my head. Another thing I was thinking about on the backside of it is, what would an honest body language series actually look like? And why would that be different from what already exists? Because like it or lump it, it is a curiosity. And it's an area of observation I'm obviously passionate about. But there is just a breathtakingly large amount of nonsense that's peddled as a result of easy access to confirmation bias motivated reasoning details on YouTube and BuzzFeed and these kind of articles. And the written approaches, even if they were done with the right intent, they are restricted by their size, right? If you were going to do these kinds of things honestly, you need the time, the space to be able to fully explore the method and fully open it out. What the hell? There you go. Live technical issue in real time. There we go. Fix that. Would it be me if something didn't go wrong? Okay. What was I saying? YouTube. Yes. So the existing body language content on YouTube, it operates from a faulty premise. That the face and the body are a readout rather than a communication device, that you can watch a clip identify a micro express. Oh, sorry, I nearly vomited. Identify a micro expression and then draw a reliable conclusion about what the person is feeling or whether they're lying. I could say it in a much more colourful sense, but the research does not support that. It would look like forget everything you ever heard by any expert about body language. Well, yeah, but it has me curious. You know, can we right some wrongs, right? And if there's one person that has their understanding expanded a little bit, then brilliant. Job done as far as I'm concerned. But like when you look at some of the stuff from some of the 2006 meta-analyses, there was this one that I'm trying to find the name now. It was Bond and DePaulo, 206 studies, 24. I was doing this last night. 24,483 judges found average lie detection accuracy of 54%. Chance is 50. The training that's offered by this tosh makes people more confident for sure, but not more accurate, right? In some cases, it makes them less accurate. So an ethical series should name this plainly, should teach what the evidence actually supports, and should demonstrate the correct tools on real footage with appropriate confidence calibration that's attached, right? So the series will not tell you what someone is feeling, but it will show you how to read valence and arousal, how to identify a baseline deviation, how to use context as a structural variable rather than an afterthought, and how to separate a reliable signal from a projection. Here's the truth. Clarity under pressure isn't natural. It's trained. Axiom is a cognitive framework, one that is designed to improve your reasoning, to improve your memory, and then the subsequent decision making that goes along with that. Not theory focused, not just inspirational quotes, mental architecture. So if you want to think clearly and do so when it counts, go to omniscient-insights.com/axiom or right there, because in chaos, the clear thinker wins. It will name what the evidence supports and exactly what it doesn't. That distinction is the whole methodology, and it's almost entirely absent from the existing content in this space. And I would imagine mostly because it ain't sexy enough. People come for confirming their original opinions that they have, or trying to hear something that's contradictory so they can be rage baited and justified in what it is that they want to comment. All of that takes away from the actual truth of how to use the information. Not one time have I ever been working or speaking to someone that works and heard them say, I was in a situation where I saw their shoulder move and it meant this. It is the most impractical thing that you can do when you're engaged. If you're in a role where it's functioned by observation only, you're behind the metaphorical glass or the actual glass, and your role allows for that, then we've got a conversation. But 90% of the time, this doesn't happen. Lisa Feldman-Farrett's theory of constructed emotion, it established that emotional categories, they're not stamped onto the face of anything by some kind of universal biological program. They are constructed by the brain using past experience and current context. Reading a face without context isn't reading an emotion, it's projecting one. Same for physical movements. Same for the implied understanding of information in the room. Trope and Todorov's research confirmed it structurally. Body posture and facial expression, when they are in some kind of conflict, observers use the body and effectively just ignore the face. Context is not a modifier, it's the mechanism. So what does someone who has internalized this methodology actually gain from following along this kind of stuff in practical terms, right? It's the ability to observe before concluding. And my God, that's in short supply. there's so many avenues, people, ideas, beliefs where you would rush to an end game and try and retroactively review the information to confirm the original opinion. So this habit of attaching explicit confidence levels to claims, the discipline of separating what the evidence supports from what you are tempted to believe, the capacity to update a position when new evidence arrives without treating that update as some kind of a defeat. These aren't communication skills or soft skills or leadership skills. They are foundational cognitive behaviors that determine whether a person's thinking is accurate or not. In a world that has industrialized inaccurate thinking, that capability is a genuine asymmetric advantage, right? And I'm going to reference Holmes because he's the namesake, but never let it be misunderstood that I am perfectly aware he isn't real. But he's captured imaginations and interests for beyond a century. Holmes wasn't useful because he noticed things that other people missed. He was useful because he built the habit of asking before concluding. Before concluding whether the conclusion was warranted by the observation. Pretty much most people, at the very least online, or those that frequent the chat, I'm trying to say transcripts, what they call chat section, comment section. Thank you. Most of those folks skip that step altogether. They've always skipped that step. The noise of the scenario and the noise that's in their heads in regard to the volume of information just made the skipping more visible and more consequential. If you go back to Kahneman's stuff on cognitive ease, it demonstrates that the brain defaults to the path of least resistance. So the answer that feels right rather than the answer is right. That is right, excuse me. So the methodology we could do with that would be a deliberate training protocol for interrupting that default. The body, what's the best word? The body participates in decision making through emotional signals. So understanding those signals, calibrating them rather than suppressing them or just blindly following them. That's what the applied methodology produces in practice. So whether it be the Keynes Jawbone or an ethical series, or some of the stuff I'm working on with Anthony Metivier, oh boy, the magnetic memory method genius. That's going to be fun when we get that going. We have a 10-part series that we're working on. So if you are one of the audience members for this show, for this podcast, you might ask, so what am I a part of, right? You're not just simply followers, right? Well, you're not subscribers in the algorithmic sense. You are a self-selected group of people who decided at some point that the reactive approach to the world wasn't good enough. That decision is the membership criterion, not demographic, not professional background, not geography. The choice to pay attention more carefully. This show, I like to think, has built something rare. And again, it's my show, so bias, all that good stuff. So, prove me wrong if you want. But this show, I like to think, has built something rare. It's an audience that is actually interested in being wrong. Because being wrong accurately is the step before being right. That is no small thing. The omniscience, as in the pluralized element of omniscient, our community, right? That's where the unmediated form of it steps up a little bit higher, and then axiom steps up into a complete unmediated form. But that's where the methodology can be demonstrated rather than described. The episodes with Bob are where the field version meets the theoretical version. The Keynes Jawbone project is where you can get to watch the tools used under genuine pressure, or use them alongside each other, and let's join in, let's do this together. All of it is the same methodology at different registers, right? So the audience who stayed so far, you understand that. That's an explicit naming of what you guys already know. If you look at some of Robin Dunbar's research on social group size and cohesion, it shows that genuine community operates through shared knowledge and shared practice, not a shared demographic. So the Deductionist podcast audience, though it may be small compared to some people with millions and millions, we've actually got both. Irving Goffman and the dramaturgical model, it describes the difference between front stage performance and backstage reality. The live format, the visible corrections, the confidence tagging in real time. All of it's a deliberate choice to operate backstage in public. That's what builds trust. Trust in your skill, rather than some kind of acquired authority. So what's actually coming for it? And what is each piece of this proverbial pie? Essentially, it's three things in parallel. So first, the main Deductionist series, it continues. Solo episodes from me, the applied Holmesian methodology, full voice of the show. Second is the Bob Pointer series, right? So it's behavioral intelligence and the Deductionist as a discrete discipline. It's operationally grounded. It's built for an audience that wants the field version rather than the classroom version. Third, the Keynes Jawbone series. Right, the way I'm picturing it in my head, it will be kind of a documentary format. Really a documentary format of an attempt to solve one heck of a puzzle using the methodology that this show's built on, using the methodology that we spent 221 episodes building. And that's just the podcast. Never mind the YouTube series is. And alongside all of that, there's this ethical series I'm toying with the idea of doing. Evidence-based, calibrated reads, the correction of a field that's been doing this wrong for decades. And then we've got the work with Anthony Metivier as well. Now, these aren't products. They are demonstrations. The methodology is not something I have to assert, but it's something I'd love to show you. Every one of these formats is a different context, right? But it's a different context in which the same tools are applied. So you'll get an idea for the transitional element of it. I can use it over here, I can use it over here, use it over here, here, right? It's the same reasoning that's operating in the puzzle, in the field, in visual reads. Format changes, its spine doesn't. The distinction between declarative knowledge and procedural knowledge is well established in cognitive science. Knowing about a skill and being able to deploy it, completely different things produced by different types of learning. So the podcast operates at a declarative level. The Keynes Jawbone project and the YouTube series operate at the procedural level. So it's watching the tools being used, not the same as being told about them. Although I will be telling you about them, obviously. It is me. And it produces a different, and according to the data, and only my opinion on seeing this from others, a more durable kind of understanding. So what would Holmes make of all of this, right? If Sherlock were observing the current information environment, what would he conclude? I would hope that he would find it instructive rather than alarming. The volume of signal failure is from purely an analytical standpoint, revealing. So when people reason badly, and they do, often and at scale, the pattern of the errors, it tells you something about the mechanism that produced them. So whether it's the confirmation bias, the survivorship bias, the fundamental attribution error running unchecked through social media, these aren't random. They are the predictable outputs of a system one brain operating in an environment that's been deliberately optimized to exploit it. Holmes wouldn't be surprised. He would just note it, file it, and then use it. He would also, for what it's worth, find most of the content about him embarrassing, I reckon. No, not the dramatic license. That's Conan Doyle's problem, but the epistemological dilution. The idea that the Holmesian method is just noticing that someone's shoes are muddy. That's observation. Method is what you do with the observation. Most content in his name stops at the observation and then calls it deduction. Holmes would call it the easy part. The Dunning-Kruger research by Kruger and Dunning. It's a funny story in my head. You weren't to know that, but it always reminds me of John Cleese. Anyway, I was telling you more about my memory palace than I needed to. Essentially, it demonstrates that incompetence produces not just poor performance, but an inability to recognize poor performance. So the confidence that bad reasoning produces is indistinguishable, in effect, from the confidence that good reasoning produces. That's the central problem the methodology addresses, not how to be more confident, but how to know whether your confidence is warranted. Holmes's entire method is an answer to that problem. So what is an actual declaration I could make at the end of this episode for you? That's the one thing I have on my post-it note. What could I make? A vow, if you will. I've been talking this whole time, and I should have been setting aside work on it. The show isn't slowing down. The methodology isn't complete. The 221 episodes already made are a foundation. They can be used as an archive. And anyone who stayed or chooses to stay from this moment, you shouldn't be a passive recipient of all of this. You should be a person who's chosen to think more carefully in a world that's made it harder. And that choice has consequences, good ones though, right? So the work that we're talking about here is built for that, not for the algorithm, not for discoverability or likes or growth metrics, for the people who want the actual methodology and stay long enough to find it. Holmes never announced cases. He took them. The announcement isn't the work is what follows. So this is kind of a starting pistol. Seneca in Epistulae Moralis, I think. I would need fact checking on that actually. There's a video a while back I got Aristotle and Socrates mixed up. Anyway, the idea is that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. And that the person who has prepared isn't anxious about what comes next. The methodology that we go into is at its core a preparation for discipline, not for a threat, just for the general condition of uncertainty. That's kind of the whole point of this exercise. So that's where we are. 221 episodes behind us. Everything that I just spoke to you about is in front. And now I'm not going to ask you to like and subscribe and all that shit, because you already know whether you want to be a part of this or not. What is happening? Oh God, I need a camera tech or something. the the methodology is either the thing that you've been looking for or it isn't. If it is, everything I've described today is being built for you. The Kane's Jawbone project starts when I am ready, not before. The YouTube series is whatever the plural of that is, that are in development will be properly announced. Bob's episodes will continue, and the behavioral intelligence work will grow. The main series not going anywhere. What changes is the scope. The spine stays the same. Holmes didn't retire, he faked his death and came back with better information. It's not a bad model for a podcast. So we'll see you in the next one.